counterparties, pre-hire due diligence, and then we do investigative support as well. And obviously, most of our work is research, and then we have the product, which is the reports that we write. So it's not quite sort of coding, although there is a tech element in terms of sifting through the data, but we are very kind of product driven in the same way, where there's a final product, a report, which goes out to a client, and then essentially the process of producing that is really key, and just as key as kind of what the final product is and whether the client's happy with it. And so many different things go into building these reports, researching them, writing them, reviewing them, sharing them with the client in a way that, you know, answers their kind of requests and requirements, but also makes it more, you know, as efficient and effective as possible for us to produce these reports. And yeah, what you said about, you know, I think there was that slide with the 5 questions of, is their role essential? Would you keep them? You know, I think I've seen, I have friends who work in much larger organizations. We have 50 people, right? But I know people who work in organizations with 15,000 people where you move a lot away from the product and the process of producing the product, if that makes sense, and you start to have all these kind of mushrooming auxiliary teams and other stuff, and the interaction of those is really difficult because you mentioned the kind of duality of having your sort of management line of the people that you're leading, but also you're part of a peer team. You're all, you know, there are many of these perhaps in kind of parallel, and those will all interact with each other in a very different way as well. You know, you've worked with large organizations. I realize I've been yapping for like 5 minutes. I need to ask a question. But the question, I guess, is, you know, how do you deal with cross-team interaction as well, right? You've got managing up, managing down, managing your peer group. There's also a lot of cross-team interaction, especially in larger organizations. And how does that work in terms of asking those same questions and getting the right answers out of them?
So I think that the challenge, I think you can hear us. I think the challenge is that there are subcultures within companies. Happens in every company I've ever been in. And you have to work out almost a subcontract. Because I think that my approach over the years has been to work out the full contract. And the other org I'm working with is like, hey, to be really clear, we're not going to work out the full contract. We have our own culture. But there's got to be a subcontract. Like you're delivering to them, they're delivering to you. I do think you need to be crisp on the contract. Like, by what date do you need this? How are we going to detect when we're off track? I would strongly suggest you actually have a written, I like written things, you have a written thing about how we're going to work together. Now, it's quite possible that they're just like, I'm sorry, I'm too freaking busy to do that. Can we just get work done? And you're going to be like, no, that's actually not how to get work done. Especially because it sounds like you guys are working on rather complicated things. So how do you actually hold each other accountable? How do they hold you accountable? How do they trust you? You've got to have a contract. I mean, we do this, Brian has helped me do this at DBT with our GTM team. And I'd say it's a work in progress, working out that contract. And, you know, we're a much smaller company than you are. So, I mean, I guess I'd just be explicit about it.
But actually, a written document.
What document that says this is how we're going to work together? Like, you're going to get these things on these days. If we're going to be late, we'll tell you about it. You're going to provide us with this. And just make it very work-focused at first. But it will then turn into a cultural contract. I mean, that'd be my advice. I don't have a great answer because I have so many negative experiences in my career of it not working. And so I'm brainstorming with you on how to make it work. And that contract. So, I mean, they expect things from your team, right? In return, they should be crisp about what they expect. That's my own.
In our case, it's even more interesting because we have this unit that is dedicated. But I think I could pretty much.
Just do it. It's easier for the rest as well.
For recording.
Oh, for recording. Oh, well, then maybe I could talk here too.
Testing.
Testing.
In our case, it's even more interesting because we have this unit that's dedicated exclusively to research and to corporate intelligence, which is very difficult to explain to the tech team. Whereas the tech team, who are supposed to create these products which integrate everything under the sun that's been currently coming with the AI boom, it's even more difficult to shift, to shift the way that you're going to describe to the corporate intelligence team, how are they going to integrate these? So my question would be, is it okay to find a middle ground generally, or should you go like hyper-specialize and hope that the other team is going to mirror and understand the other when it comes to...
I mean, I think the only practical thing is to find that middle ground, because they have their jobs, they get paid for doing something. You're going to have to negotiate. You're going to have to negotiate that middle ground with them. Like I said, I was hinting with Brian here, I think when you try to impose one group's culture on another culture, I think it actually goes south pretty quickly. And so, no, I'd suggest you negotiate that middle ground. So when you talked about research, it's like corporate research and business research. It's not technical research.
There is a degree of technical research, but mostly it deals with open source intelligence, with basically finding as much as possible one particular topic pertaining to one particular company or one particular phenomenon. For example, if one of the largest investment banks in the world comes to you and says, hey, we would be interested in these current technical due diligence providers for sub-Saharan African jurisdictions that want to overhaul their power grids, then you kind of have to go into the technical bits which aren't necessarily technical in the code and tech world sense, but you would need to know whether they've been filing patents at a certain rate recently, whether they have been focusing on a particular emerging technology versus the other, why are they focusing on that one, and how do they plan to integrate that, and whether they have a good track record at integrating these things, and then also finding specific examples on them.
So here's my thought. My talk in 2022 was about, as companies scale, how do you scale the culture? And you can find it on marklovestech.com, or you can find it, I think it's on the Techsylvania site, but I don't know. Or you can just link into me. MongoDB does a very cool thing on its values page. It lists what each value means. It also lists what each value doesn't mean. And to tell you the truth, that is the far more useful part of the value. Because if you as a company have agreed on a set of values and a way of working together, you can call out the other team for not working well with you, not being dependable as an example, or not being crisp, or not being whatever it is you need. You'll often find those on the what this doesn't mean part of the page. So I'd advise you just go look at MongoDB's values page and see if your company actually has a set of modeled behaviors and anti-behaviors which you can use to build these relationships. Be my advice.
I'm gonna make a note of that and check the MongoDB.
Uh-oh, this is an employee. He's gonna say, Mark, that team stuff.
No. My question's quite short. You said during your presentation that at some point you've yourself created bad teams. I think it's easy to achieve tunnel vision when you're involved in it. So I was curious, how far in did you realize that you've built a bad team, and how have you corrected the course?
So I went to Asia, was CTO of a company in Asia. Within 3 months, I had pissed off half of my directs. And it took me the next 6 months to get back all but one of them, who fundamentally believed that I was incredibly self-interested, could not talk himself out of it, and he ended up transferring to another team. I mean, but I had to dig in really, really hard. And that's when my coach told me, you do realize that treating all these people the same is a recipe for disaster. I think I had 11 directs right then. You know, there's 11 different people. And that worked with all but one of them. And the damage had been done with that person who just would never believe that even this me leaning in with him wasn't just part of me being self-interested. And it wasn't just like another layer of the deceit. And so he transferred to another team. So, do you have any thoughts? Did you watch the talk?
Yeah, I watched the talk. I got lucky with your talk. The next talk, of course, I can't watch now. One of the things is that, like, referring to your previous talk as well. You know, how do you scale up, etc. There's a lot of startups that start with, like, say, friends and family. Right? The founders were buddies and friends, and so that is also potentially, you know, at the beginning that's great because you understand each other and there is a high amount of trust. However, then, you know, it would be amazing if those people just happen to be the best people to work with. So how do you solve that?
So the chances of them being the right people to work with when you have a company of 5 people and the right people to work with when you have a company of 500 are so near zero that it's de minimis. Look, I'm really close with Sasha. I'm on his board, so he does it really well. He finds them new roles and treats them with dignity and respect. And so people at Superbet know that even if things go south, they will continue to be treated with dignity. They will continue to have respect, which makes them not indulge in hiding behavior. So as the company grows and they grow, and that gap becomes unsustainably wider, they'll seek out Sasha and have a conversation. Now, if he didn't treat them with dignity and respect, they would hide, they would posture, they would fake, they would lie, because they want to keep their job. He does it really, really well. That's the only thing. And by the way, I said some snarky things about your uncle and your sister and promoting and all that, but at the end of the day, there is a fundamental difference, which in most families, you will be involved with this person for the rest of your life. And so that completely moderates your ability to actually be their supervisor. And yeah, it's great to get started, but yeah, I mean, eventually I think you have to exit all of those relationships. But do it with dignity. Other questions?
What does that look like in terms of when you do have to exit that relationship and that person does need to basically leave? What does that sort of dignity look like?
So they typically move into an IC role as a consultant, sharing their knowledge, and they typically remain on the payroll. They typically don't get any more stock grants, but you let the current ones vest. And as they slowly are in less and less meetings, and the company has slowly weaned themselves off, and they've weaned themselves off the company in a way that wasn't disrespectful and didn't make people think that they're going around with targets on the back of their heads that they didn't know about. It actually builds a really good culture. You know, there are people that I've been involved with in my life who stayed with the company for a year in an advisory role. Worked out well. And when they left for a great job, and the company left. So it does cost money to do that. Let's be really clear. But you got to do it in a way that doesn't cost productivity. And so most of the time, that means moving them out of their position immediately. Not waiting a month, not doing a transition period, but moving them into some other role. So that's, I mean, the company comes first, right? The company is priority 1. People are priority 1.0001. Hopefully you can have both things, but when the two get in conflict, you have to side on the side of the company. And so that's how you do it, is you just move them aside. Now, the question is, and I've talked with Sasha about this, does it cost more money to do it, or does it actually save the company money? He has a very strong belief that it saves the company money, because having a group of a couple hundred people in one part of the company who saw you treat someone with respect has benefits which are far worth one person's year of salary. That's how he thinks about it.
So I've been leading teams and trying to do the right thing, you know, and of course I failed as well. But at some point in time you have your team culture, but it's still embedded in a larger company that may not be there yet, or at least you feel it's not there yet, and that it may not be accepting your culture, or, you know, it's hard to thrive as a high performance team in a larger culture that isn't there yet. How do you solve that? Because, you know,
You ask an impossible question. Amazon's culture has a lot of great things going for it. Amazon's culture has some challenges. Grab's culture, which I have here on my suitcase, honor, heart, humility, and hunger, has some great things going for it. I guess my very snarky answer to you is I like being at companies with strong cultures. Cultures where the CEO says what the culture is, and they make it very, very clear that you can get on board or you can leave. Like literally that clear. That is said at Amazon. It was said at Grab. It was said at Mongo. Now, once you've been there for a year or two, and you have opinions, and you're like, you know, this cultural value is not working out well for us, you've earned the right to make those comments. But none of this is related to the question you asked me, which is a company with varied cultures, with a weak culture, with all this. I probably wouldn't have gone to that company. I wouldn't want to work there. I mean, at the end of the day, like I said, you only have 2,500 weeks. Why be miserable and live in cognitive dissonance every day? I don't know about the rest of you. I find cognitive dissonance and that slide I put about living with illogic, that drives me batshit. I would rather be at Oracle, which had a completely predatory culture. You didn't perform, you were out. Yelling in meetings was encouraged. But the culture was predictable. You went to work every day and you knew what was going to happen. And you could function in that culture. You could learn to yell back. I find companies with fuzzy cultures indescribably hard to navigate. But maybe that's because I'm a tiny bit on the spectrum. I don't know. Do you have a question? You came in. Oh. Were you in my talk?
No, sorry. Just hearing you, a question popped to my head, so if I may. Because I'm thinking, okay, maybe if I will be as a CEO, actually I am, but I'm just a startup, so. But if I'm the CEO of a big company, my moral dilemma is, and I don't know how good question is, but I mean, of course I would know what my values are and how to impose it, but I ask myself, is it right to impose it? So it's like a therapeutic question to you, for me, to teach me, what is the line of a culture being, I don't know if I'm clear enough, ethical enough for me to impose to someone and to say, okay, if you're not doing that, you're out, or he will take out, or yeah, because I, on the other hand, I would say, let's let the culture build up by itself, and I don't know, maybe it's not right for me to impose you to. If I yell at someone, of course, my tendency is to yell, okay, you didn't do something, why didn't you do it? But I say, okay, is it right, or am I too harsh with him?
So, use the word impose. That's a pretty strong word. I don't think you should impose, but I also don't think you should let the culture just build up out of nothing. That's not going to work, because you're going to have this mishmash of conflicting stuff. No one's going to be able to get work done. No one's going to be psychologically safe. However, there's something in the middle, which Amazon did in its early days, DBT did in its early days, is there were multiple revisions of the cultural documents. Amazon, even when I was there and Amazon had crossed 800,000 employees, I complained to Jeff that we did not have a principle around learning. Like literally there was no way in an interview, because at Amazon all interviews are done by the leadership values, there was no place to put, oh my God, I talked to this person and they do research. So we created Learn and Be Curious. But then Jeff got back to me and he said, I don't want another damn value. So we combined the value of earning trust with the value of being vocally self-critical. So my point is that if you looked at Amazon values over the years, there's like 10 different versions of them over the 25 years Amazon's been in business. So you can do it collaboratively. I would suggest you do it collaboratively. I would not suggest you don't do it. I think people want, look, I didn't hit on it in the talk because I was watching the timer a little bit, Culture is a social contract. And here's the contract. I don't want you to tell me what to do. I've never been interested in anyone telling me what to do, and I bet the rest of you are the same. However, I am willing to conform to norms of behavior under one condition, that the rest of you do too. So if I have guardrails that I am sure you will obey, then I am willing to obey those guardrails as well, because the social contract, the quid pro quo, is valuable. Like if I know that at this company, no one is going to make sexist, misogynistic, I can't even say it, comments, then misogynistic comments, then that's part of the culture. I'm excited about that. I won't make them either. Not that I want to. That's a bad example. But the net is there's a social contract. The toxicity that you need to be afraid of is when you feel bound by that social contract of behavior and people regularly point to, hey, have you looked on our wiki at the cultural things? You violated number 7. And then people who are elite or leaders or long tenured people, you see them not obey those same things. There are few things as toxic as you giving up your side of that social contract and then you observing other people not obeying the social contract. So as you start your culture at your company, I would advise you to have that conversation that we are entering into a contract together as a company. You're either all on board or you're not. There's going to be a comment period where you get to comment. But once we decide to ratify V1 of this thing, you're all expected to be on board. Now, you can certainly propose V2 at any time, but until V2 has been ratified, you will be held to the standards of behavior in V1. That's my suggestion. I have this thing that I hate about companies, which is they have this thing, and then people start saying, oh, we should change that thing. And all of a sudden, the thing which was cast in concrete has now become muddy. No, I'm a transactional database guy. Transaction number 1 is committed until transaction 2 is committed. There is no middle state. And so culture is the same way. If you have a middle state of culture, it's not a fulfilling place to work. And that was a really long answer to your question. I'm so sorry.
No, it's clear. It's clear. Actually, you answered my question. Thanks.